Hello and welcome to another episode of Graham Hughes' PUBCAST. And again, I'm joined by Adam Lee. We are still in Luxembourg.
And we are still in a pub.
And we have two more British Luxembourgish people who were British but are now being forced to be Luxembourgish by Brexit. Here to talk with us, we've got Chris and we've got Keith. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. So I'm going to start with Chris here.
Absolute brave souls joining us after this is our first podcast of the day.
So Chris, tell us your life story.
Oh, my life story. I left Britain in 1977, went to Brussels. Then I came to Luxembourg, stayed here for nearly 40 years. Spent 6 months working in Italy, working for the European Commission. So I felt as if I'm living, breathing European, you know.
Oh, wow.
I'm absolutely
So Peter,
devastated.
who we had in the last podcast, he also worked for the EU Commission as well.
Mm-hmm.
So are you the unelected bureaucrats that we've been warned about? Were you the one who bent our bananas or made them straight? I can never remember which one it was.
Just work there.
No, I know
European
what you were.
civil
You were the one
servants.
who said all the condoms needed to be the same size. You know, of course, British men are somehow more well endowed. But we did a podcast with Richard Corbett, who's an MEP, and that was one of the things that he was telling us about. But
Yeah,
unfortunately,
the EU was standardising condom sizes.
But unfortunately, an insect crawled across the lens, so we had to edit that out.
So Keith, tell us your life story.
Life story, well, quickly, I'm a Londoner.
I'm sorry.
I was going to tell
Northern human.
I'm a West Ham fan as well, so that makes it even worse.
I'm an Everton fan, mate. I know you're paying.
We've got a man with problems.
We'll get there. I until 1990, I was happily working in the UK civil service, and then had the opportunity to go abroad. Yeah. Went to Germany, lived and worked in Munich on the Eurofighter program, which was fantastic. And from then on, basically never looked back and travelled around to different parts of Europe. Lived in Norway, lived in Germany, back to the UK briefly, and then Brussels, like your good self there.
So Eurofighter, I mean, were you working on the engineering of that, or was it marketing?
No. I've not got the skill. Even though my daughter tells all her friends, or used to tell her friends, that her dad made these planes. In fact,
fair enough. That's what I'd say.
I was the human resources guy, which doesn't have anything to do with it at all. Just hiring the people to work on it. The good and qualified folk.
Fair enough. But was the Eurofighter? There's huge stuff about that in the 1990s. And you didn't really hear about it.
Well, it's a great one. It's a great one to just start on with this whole Brexit issue, because what the idea of the Eurofighter is that 4 nations, so that's UK, Spain, Italy, and Germany. If 4 nations are building one thing, then obviously it's cheaper.
Yes.
As opposed to just one nation having to build thing, in which case they pay 100% of the costs, which is kind of what
So this
a lot of the EU is about.
This is like the UK is now talking about developing its own GPS system in the event of no deal Brexit. Yeah.
This is something that I've not really touched on, but a lot of the nations that became independent in the 20th century because of the end of colonialism and all this. There was a point where I was thinking, hang on, but once you are independent, you suddenly have to pay for your postal service. You have to pay for your defence. You have to pay for a lot of stuff that you would otherwise worry about, let someone else worry about. And it's interesting that Japan and Germany both were forced after the Second World War, quite rightly, I guess, to have a diminished military.
What you'll see,
and they were able to invest their money instead of spending it all on guns and tanks and fighter jets that you were going to put in the desert. I guess we were talking about that in another podcast. You could spend it on health and education
and developing really good cars.
And infrastructure and public transport.
Great rail systems. Yeah.
I mean, there's a role, clearly. I mean, some people will say there isn't, but there is a role, certainly in my humble opinion, for defence. I mean, if you don't have defence, everything else can fall apart.
Did you used to work for NATO by any chance?
I did indeed.
Brilliant.
I did indeed. Yes, I did.
Keith, you are my man. I've been wanging on about NATO for years now.
Yeah. I spent 20 years working for North Atlantic Treaty Organisation.
How many members of NATO are there?
29.
And how many of them are members of the European Union?
22, on a rough guess.
Correct, yeah, 22.
Oh,
well, so there are allies who have signed up to something saying that if we get invaded, they'll come and help us out.
They have a thing called Article 5, which essentially means it's a bit like the Three Musketeers. an attack on one is an attack on them all.
Yeah.
Yes.
So no matter who you are, and particularly those newer member nations who are very close to the Russian border, they know that if
Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania,
and so on, Poland and the like, if something happens, the rest of NATO comes to their aid, which is kind of puts Russia off a little bit from doing anything too nasty.
This is one of the things that the Brexit supporters go on about, though, is EU expansionism and how it has offended Russia. I mean, that's an interesting...
Offended Russia?
Yeah, EU expansionism, because these countries that are now bordering Russia, when the Soviet Union dissolved, Russia didn't want them to join NATO because they felt, that's NATO getting too close to our borders.
Yes.
But
that's why they invaded Georgia. That's why they invaded Ukraine.
But this is one of the things.
That's why they interfered in the Brexit referendum.
This is one of the things that the Brexit supporters wang on about, is that they say the expansionism of the EU has caused Russia offence because they've got closer. So it's this classic Brexit supporters mentality that we've got one thing and we've mixed it to the other, and they've said, it was NATO expansionism that's really what the root
I think maybe we should turn to you, because I think it was the EU that first kind of went knocking on the door for the new member nations.
Yes, certainly. In the East. Yeah, I mean, it's all about peace, isn't it? It's all about...
It's a peace project.
Yes, a peace project, yeah.
That's what Winston Churchill called it. Yeah. The Great European Peace Project.
The expansion of the EU was pushed by the UK. The UK was up for it, whereas other countries are a bit more reluctant. They're like, the UK is like, it's great, we'll get people from Romania and Bulgaria, and we should keep on expanding, and we should make the whole of Europe part of the EU.
And Boris Johnson wanted Turkey to join.
Yes, that's because he's half Turkish. I'm born in America. He's an immigrant. Did you know he's an immigrant?
He's an immigrant.
He's an immigrant. He came out his mum in the wrong place.
Funny foreigner.
So he should go back there.
Taking our women.
He can actually legally stand as president for America. He can if he gets his American citizenship back.
No, he's revoked his American
but he'd get it back.
Well, he could do.
James Bond had his license to kill revoked in the 1989 movie License to Kill, but he got it back.
Yeah, James Bond is fiction.
Isn't Boris Johnson then?
Boris Johnson.
I wish Boris Johnson was fiction.
He was fiction.
If you presented Brexit as a book, and said this is the thing, and let's just go, this is ridiculous. this is beyond the realms of fantasy. How can you think that this is going to be a thing that people would actually do in real life? And now here we have Brexit, where England, I'm going to say England because England is positioning itself into becoming the least competitive, advanced economy in the world.
One of the problems here, we spoke about this very briefly earlier on. I don't know what you think now. Now you've had a couple of pints, but
we don't think.
One of the things is that humans, as normally, don't like to change their minds.
No.
Once they've made a decision, like choose cards in a magician show, would you like to take another card? No, I'll stick with this one. Tends to be the norm. And once you've made a decision and you said I'm doing this, you don't like the embarrassment of going back on your word. You don't like really the difficulties, and there's something in it when it comes to really your own pride that's at stake. And facts don't make a difference.
No.
And that's really the issue. I think a lot of the those who think that coming out of Europe is such a dreadful idea, which is certainly us four around the table. I mean, it's very difficult to persuade other people with facts why it's a bad idea.
Yeah,
because emotionally they're tied to a decision they've already made.
Well, we say this quite often that it has become a cult. It's like Scientology.
When you're talking to a leaver, it's like telling them that the person that they love is a wrong 'un. That's how difficult it is. But I love them.
But don't you think also, let's
some reasonable things.
Don't you think, let's put the boot on the other foot. If there were a Brexiteer amongst us, we would sit down, would we not, and try to suspend our disbelief and say, well, tell us, what are the advantages? Would we? Or would we not?
Yeah.
Or would we still plough on and say...
I keep asking on Twitter, please give us an advantage. Please give us a bonus of Britain becoming a pariah state of the world.
Have you heard James O'Brien on LBC?
Yep.
And so, he gets these people phoning in still saying, we can do our own trade deals and all this kind of stuff, and we're going to... And he's still... it still ties them in knots. It's the same rhetoric.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they're still singing the same rhetoric of 2016, but the facts are now that even the government, everything that we were saying and everything that you were probably saying in 2016,
Project
2017 was Project Fear. Well said. But now the government are saying it and they said, well, we knew we were voting for that.
Well, of course they didn't know what they were voting for. And
They knew they were voting for Project Fear. And that's the quandary that we're in now. So
It was a leap in the dark, really. This is what they just think that it's going to be absolutely marvellous, but they don't know what it's going to be like. But they've got the utmost faith in nothing.
Yeah.
Isn't this a kind of, when we talk about human nature, isn't this a bit weird? Because usually people vote to just keep the status quo. For such a leap into the unknown as leaving the biggest and most successful trading union in the world, it's kind of like... there's a point where you go, well, how bad did it have to be for people's
I don't know the
lives, especially in the
I don't know the
north?
figures, but there are people apparently who would think that no deal means that. No deal means we just stay as we are.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, there is a misconception there.
Well, because that we were told that we would get a better deal than we already have. We've
It's
already
impossible.
got Germany plus plus plus. David Davis, who was the first Brexit secretary, I think he's Conservative MP. I'm not sure where he's the MP for, but he's from Hull, so quite close to where we're from, and thick as mince, right? But he quite often said, oh, we're going to get Canada plus. And then he said, we'll get Canada plus plus. And then he said, we'll get Canada plus plus plus. He just keeps adding plus to the word Canada. But we've actually got Germany plus plus now because we don't have the euro, we don't have Schengen. We've got plus when we have the rebates.
Opt-outs on everything.
Sorry?
We've got opt-outs on everything.
Yeah.
We were in, we're opt-out, and now we want to be out, we're opt-ins.
But can I ask you guys really, let's be really 100% serious now. If tomorrow the Liberals get in...
I thought you said you wanted to be serious.
and
But continue.
And they revoke Article 50 and we're all out. What's going to happen in the UK? What's going to happen in England? What do you really think we're going to...
I think people go, oh, God, that's really annoying, and they'll pretend that there's
Thank you very much. What's your name?
Ariana.
Hello, Ariana.
Ariana, hi. Thank you for bringing the beers.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're in Oscar's Bar and Grill still.
I met up with Femi, who's one of the...
Oh, yeah, I love Femi, yeah.
I've met him a few times, and we did a podcast earlier this year in his car, driving down the Durham coast. And he said something about this, and he said he felt like to revoke it tomorrow would be an error. He wanted to have a referendum,
Right.
which was fair
Yeah.
and legal, and no one was allowed to
And
treat
with the
cheat,
facts,
and and actually democratic. And then it could be put to bed. But then as soon as that was done, because Remain would win, and this is why the Leavers do not want a second
Well, even
referendum.
Jacob Rees-Mogg has said
Said, Remain would now vote to rejoin or Remain.
Remain
Yeah.
big, and they would win. And
Yeah.
they're so
Yeah.
desperate for it.
Sorry,
how long have you been in Europe?
20 years.
20 years. So
Yeah.
were you entitled to vote?
No.
No. And yourself?
Well, I moved back to the UK for a couple of years.
I'm so sorry.
And so I did have the right to vote.
That's
I
good.
Right,
voted
yeah.
in the referendum.
Yeah. Can we ask which way you voted?
I think that goes without saying.
Right, okay, you're amongst friends here.
Just to go back to what Femi said, because there's a bit of an addendum to this. He said, the thing is, once we have that referendum, and once it goes through, and once we decide to stay in the EU, we need to address the issue that made so many people in Sunderland
Yeah.
and everywhere else
Rotherham,
around the
so-
north
Yeah.
vote overwhelmingly to
Yeah.
leave the EU.
Absolutely. Couldn't
because
agree more.
that is the problem. Because the people feel left behind. They feel
do.
isolated. They feel like London gets everything. And
My best friend, Jonathan, and he's a director of a company back in the UK. His wife is a consultant anaesthetist in the NHS. So they've got a few quid. You know, one of their neighbours was Nick Clegg.
We remember him.
Yeah. Anyway, but
he's working for Facebook now.
yeah. I wonder whether he's making them take out student loans. Anyway, but he John and Sarah, they've got a few quid and they're very successful, and obviously way more intelligent than myself and Graham. But when the day after the referendum, we were going to get short notice passports from Durham, funnily enough, where Graham lives now. And I said to him, it's a protest vote. People in Sunderland, people in Rotherham, people in Doncaster, in these towns, Barnsley, Wakefield, you know, they have been left behind. They've seen all their industry go. And their industries were their communities.
Yeah.
But the government told them that it was the EU's fault.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
The government didn't. It was the media,
Well, the media,
told
the
them.
media,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
The government supporting
scapegoat.
media.
That's a good
You know,
scapegoat.
and this is classic conservatism, because the Conservatives wanted to get rid of free TV licenses for people over 75, I think. So what did they do? They said to the BBC, you'll have to manage that. So then the BBC have now said, we can't afford to fund free TV licenses for over 75-year-olds. So the government aren't the bad guys, it's the BBC. It's classic
I
conservatism.
mean, a couple of points on the fact that you say that people build up some sort of, well, I guess anger is ultimately the point.
It
here.
is, yeah, that's
Is
anger,
that,
yeah.
again, talking about your average human being, I don't think any of us like really to be controlled. And a lot of the stuff that the media was putting out, a lot of the way it was presented was that we are controlled by Europe. And these are unelected bureaucrats and they don't understand how things are around here. In the same way, of course, the Conservatives at the time of that vote were also trying to control the people. It will be a good idea for you to stay in the EU. This is what David Cameron is telling you, which is almost invariably going to backfire, isn't it? It's going to go the other way.
Because people in Worksop and Rotherham are not going to agree
there's also
with David Cameron.
There's also the fact that if you okay, so we saw that in cities where there was a lot of immigrants, they tended to vote to remain. Places that were very, very white, like County Durham, voted to leave because of the fear of immigration rather than the actual fact of immigration. But there was a point that was made that I thought was kind of understandable, that there were people in these left behind communities, and they're left behind, and we were talking about this the other day, because they were cut off from the rest of the world by the Beaching Acts back in the 1960s.
No railways.
There's no way of getting around unless you own your own car. The only way to have your own car is to have a really good job. If you don't have a really good job, you don't have your own car, so you just basically sit in your house.
And
you have people under house arrest, effectively, old people in rural areas, especially in the north, who are living under house arrest because they can't leave their house because there's no bus services, there's no way of getting out. But the point was going to be, if you are white and working class, you don't feel like anyone is standing. It's on your side.
Yeah.
Because if you're black and working class, there are people actually out there pushing for your side. If you're Jewish and working class, if you're Pakistani or you're Muslim. You've got people fighting. They felt like there was no one standing up for them, and that is understandable.
So we have to put
as much as Brexit absolutely boils my piss, I gotta say I get why.
But we have to put a big caveat here, because the fact is that there's a terrible side to some of us Remainers, that they were a bit stupid and they didn't know.
That's an interesting point, and we've spoken about this in the past.
Which is definitely not, because these people are our brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, aunties, uncles, whatever.
I know, Keith, but I just slipped into it. I'm sorry. If I met someone,
they were not stupid. They were ill-informed.
Yeah, well, why didn't they listen to us? You know, this is why they listen to Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage, and not us.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, and James O'Brien talks about this quite regularly, and the point is that it's to have what is it? It says contempt for the con men, compassion for the conned, and it is a con.
I find that a bit patronising, though. I really do.
And
I think that we've got to a point where people are just so angry about political correctness and what they call now the woke culture, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's so unfair. Why can't I insult this ethnic minority and get away with it?" But if you say to them, "Listen, you're really uneducated. You left school at 14 with no qualifications. You don't know what you're talking about." Then they say, "Oh, but hang on, you can't say that to me. That's not fair. You're calling us all stupid." And you can't win.
No, well, you can't. But
so I've been guilty. Sorry, Keith. I have been guilty of
the very same thing.
Of what you've just said, of saying, leave us, oh my God, I want to meet someone who can match me intellectually and tell me why they want to leave the EU so much.
Going back to the point, though, about how human nature is. You have a Volvo, right? You said it's done.
No, I have a Saab.
Even worse.
For some the same thing.
Didn't start the other day.
And the thing is, when you have a car like that, you notice other cars like that.
Yes, you do. And I hadn't seen a Saab for years until I bought a Saab, and then I bought a second one.
Exactly.
And now everyone's got a Saab.
Is that like when you encounter someone's name and then you hear lots of people say that? The point is
that you look for something that's on your mind. So if you're looking for evidence as to why Brexit's a good thing, you'll find it. And you'll find people that will support you that Brexit's a good thing. If you're like us Remainers, you'll surround yourself with Remainers who say it's just a dreadful idea.
Right, I live in Rotherham, I can't do that.
That's why he comes all the way to Luxembourg.
It's running away.
Get out of Rotherham.
Running away. But that is a truism. And so again, but what on earth are we doing in the country? That's what hurts me so much, is that you've got decent people who have just taken these opposite views. And I would say ill-informed, but maybe others watching this would say I'm ill-informed. But nonetheless, they've taken a view. And now we've basically got roundheads and cavaliers. I mean, we'd be just ending up with a civil war in the UK if we're not careful.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do we stop this?
Well, what we saw on October the 31st was about 7 people protesting.
Now, to be fair, let's give it credit where credit's due. There was about 20 people. There was about 20.
That was compared with a week earlier when there was over 1 million people in London. If Brexit doesn't happen, I don't think society's going to fall apart. But I do feel like we have to do it with a referendum. And I would love to revoke Article 50. And do you know what? Actually, the Lib Dems, if they do win, I'm sure there'll be someone who say, listen, revoke Article 50 so we don't have this ticking time bomb, and then put it back to the people and say, this is the deal that we're going to have.
This is the deal.
We should have done in the first place. Yeah. Why were they activating something without having any end game? Why didn't they have their ducks in a row? They put out this lie about, we can't negotiate with the EU until we activate Article 50. That wasn't true. Yeah. We could have negotiated with the EU, got a deal together, and then activated Article 50.
Some of the propaganda that was spread was, we will not invoke Article 50 until we have a deal.
Did you tell Jeremy Corbyn that? He wanted to invoke it the next day after the referendum.
I know, what kind of... I mean, he should have just stayed on his bloody allotment, you know?
But going back to this whole issue, if I may, about the Civil War, another point I'd like to make. You're sat here with a rugby union, English rugby union.
Well, I always wear rugby shirts.
As a proud Englishman.
I never said I was proud.
Okay.
As an unfortunate Englishman.
I'll say I am. But nonetheless, I have a different view. And the point is that a lot of Brexiteers think that because we voted Remain, or because we have a Remain outlook, that somehow we're disloyal, somehow we're not patriotic, somehow we're not with it. And this could not be further from the truth. It's just in our perception for our beloved country, it's not a good thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, it is right. I am proud to be British. I am proud of what my family has done with it. My family has paid a high price for this country. Or for the UK. You know, I'm proud to be British. I'm proud to be an England rugby supporter. You know, I wear a Wallabies shirt. I wear a Springbok shirt. I wear an All Black shirt. You know, but I am proud to be an Australian citizen. I'm proud to be a British national.
But to be fair to you, Adam, you are also. We did the podcast where we listed all of Britain's crimes in the past.
Yeah. Yes.
You are also aware of the shit that Britain's done.
Yes.
And you don't deny it, and you don't run away from it. You say, we did this awful thing.
Yeah.
And I think that in your position where you feel proud to be British, but it's tempered by the fact that we did some terrible things in the past.
If you take Luxembourg, and maybe you can help because you've been here a little longer than me, but I mean, less than half, I think. Or just about, it's just about 50-50 Luxembourgers and other nationals here, isn't there? And it doesn't stop people being proud to be Portuguese, people being proud to be German, Italian, French, what have you, but they mix extraordinarily well.
They do.
Yeah. And we all mix, and we we celebrate with them.
Yeah.
Their national things that they do. With the Portuguese and their sardines, and the
Swedish with their
Scandinavians,
surströmming.
all sorts of things.
How has Brexit affected you personally living here? Have you had to go for dual nationality?
Well, I have got dual nationality. Yeah.
Oh, right.
How
look at
long
you.
did that take? Was that a bit of a process?
Because I was here before 1984.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do the language
The
test.
book or the year?
Sorry?
The book of the year.
Oh.
That is quite an insult, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quick-witted.
Graham, as you know, you can tell Graham's a master of quick wit and repartee.
But I've been learning Luxembourgish since, you know.
What happened in 1984? What happened?
Hang on,
changed.
you can speak Luxembourgish. Can you say welcome to Luxembourg in Luxembourgish?
No, I can just say hello.
Say hello in Luxembourg.
Bayan.
That'll do us. Anyway, sorry, so what happened in 1984?
Well, they said that Luxembourgish would be an official language. And, yeah, well, that was just a date that luckily...
So it was an arbitrary date?
It was an arbitrary date, yeah. So, yeah, we were very lucky that we were here before 1984 and were able to ask for the nationality. And my kids...
So when did you become a Luxembourg national?
5 years ago.
5 years ago.
So it was actually before the Brexit
Well, it was
referendum.
because there was rumblings, you know.
Yeah,
You know,
fair enough.
because when I was working, we were reading the newspapers, the British newspapers.
I'm sorry.
And these headlines, and we were just absolutely horrified about all these lies that they were
Unchallenged,
making up. And
absolutely
unchallenged. And we said, well, what can we do about this? And we felt absolutely powerless about this. And we irregularly had meetings with the UK representative and to the EU, and they would come and talk to us, you know, and we said, how can we do this? We complained to them and said, please do something about this. Publish information, facts, and the truth about
reality,
the EU,
yeah.
and so stop people believing all these lies that they're reading all the time. But nothing happened.
So you said you were from York originally.
Mm-hmm.
You moved back to York before the referendum.
I did.
And you were already a Luxembourg citizen, and then the referendum went the way it went, and you said, I'm going to pull up stumps and go back to lovely Luxembourg.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going backwards and forwards all the time.
Right, okay, yeah, because you've got family back there.
Yeah, I've got family, and that's what I wanted to do. Now that I've retired, I want to spend a bit of time with my family there in Britain, because, yeah, like I said...
But your children are here in Luxembourg?
No, my son, he spent a bit of time in Germany, now he's in Madrid.
Freedom of movement.
Exactly.
It's not a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Which is a problem for families where, for example, you have a family, you have a mother and daughter. The mother goes for all Brits. The mother goes for the Luxembourgish nationality, takes the test, gets the test, becomes Luxembourgish nationality. The daughter automatically, if it's a child, gets the Luxembourg nationality, but not the husband.
Why?
Well, because he, hasn't bothered to take the Luxembourgish test and hasn't bothered to apply to become a Luxembourger and doesn't automatically get it on dint of the wife having married, or vice versa. So you'll end up with families where some of them, even though they all come over as Brits, British nationals, may end up in different situations.
So the moral of this story is marry an Italian. And because you get citizenship automatically on marriage. It's one of the few countries that allows that.
Okay.
And
how about we fight for a better future rather than...
So if there's any Italians watching this...
He's up for grabs.
Sorry, Judy.
Ciao.
Ciao. You're a Brit. Yeah. Sorry, mate. And you haven't got a look in. I'll give you the hard tip about that. But anyway.
I was talking to a Canadian who was saying to me, I can't believe you guys voted to leave the EU.
We didn't
I
all
would
vote for it. Yeah.
kill to have the opportunity to live and work and retire
anywhere
and build a house and
Yeah.
start a business in 27 other
Let me
countries.
just- can I
Don't forget,
throw-
there's only 3 countries in the whole of North America.
Yeah. Let me just throw another idea in, though. Again, British is more saying more about people than anything else. If you're in Europe, you're used to crossing borders.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're used to it. You're used to different foods. You're used to different languages. You're used to it.
Really good point.
It's it's something you do.
Yeah.
When you go on holiday in the summer, you could drive
Yeah.
to the beach or the mountains. So UK, no, you've got to actually go somewhere. It's like a voyage. You have to go across
it's a
the
little
channel.
more
It's
detached.
something different.
Yeah, it's a little more detached.
And for some, okay, maybe I'll get beaten up for saying this, but there's a fear of Europe.
Yeah, don't read
Which
the comments.
doesn't exist.
No, I'm not gonna beat
It
you up,
doesn't
mate. I
exist.
agree.
It doesn't exist
Yeah.
with if you're a French or a German or a.
Well, when I
because
was-
you're used to mixing and moving around. But you reminded me of a tale of a Brit friend of mine who came over with his English car and came into Luxembourg and had some beers in some of the lovely bars that we have here. Drove off and got stopped by the police. And the policeman
it's the
came round,
Luxembourg Roses.
knocked on the window, wound the window down, and he said, "Have you been drinking?" And he said, "Yes, I have." That's why he's driving.
I like the way you did that. Wind down the window.
Yes, it was a while ago. It was a while ago.
I've had one car with windy windows, and I'm 46.
All the cars I've ever owned have had windy windows.
No, I've got. He
I've
gets
got
in my
40.
car and he pushes the button. It's like it's this novel.
I know.
thing.
I'm like. It's like
down.
someone. It's like someone from the countryside going on an escalator. That's how exciting it is for me. But the othering of the EU, which is what you're getting to there with the whole sort of the continent is separate to us. It's not Britain, and so there are 7 continents of the world, and Britain.
Yeah.
That is a mentality that is ingrained in the UK. What can we do about
Well,
it?
I suppose the point is that many Brits think that we're more closely aligned to North America.
Trump.
Well, the language.
There's a lot
The language.
divided by a common language ultimately, and I think that we'll find more differences between the UK and the US, for example, than you would between many parts of Europe.
It's really good talking to people who've been here for a while. Now, you have family here?
Yeah,
So you've got.
and in the UK. So I'm hopping backwards and forwards all the time. Yeah.
So you have a partner, wife,
Yeah.
and you have both. Okay, very rich. And children.
Very liberated.
Yeah. So how many children have you got?
2.
2, and where are they?
One here, one in the UK.
One in the UK, and are they Luxembourg citizens?
One is a Luxembourgish, the other one not.
and the one in the UK isn't.
Isn't.
So you must be really.
So this is the whole point, how families are going to get in some way divided up by dint of their passports and what they have.
Yeah.
Some will be entitled to do certain things within one family that the other brother or sister can't do.
And was the child that you've got born in Luxembourg and got citizenship by being born here, or
just
applied for it?
Applied for it, yeah, got it. Yeah.
So your child who's in the UK,
Yeah.
do you think they want to move back here and try and give it a fair crack of the whip? Or?
No, she'll stay in the
But
UK.
can she not apply for a nationality because you are a Luxembourg?
We'll have to look into that. I think I'll have to look into that.
she
But no, I mean, the point is, again, she's a patriotic Brit and she's working in the National Health Service and all that. Which is another point because Brexit is overriding everything. We now have a general election.
Yeah.
And other issues are starting to come up. So people are starting to think, well, maybe they're something we should be thinking about here when I vote.
How is the rest of the world seeing us? Because we feel very in a bubble in the United Kingdom, especially with the way the media is and BBC and Daily Mail.
Astounded, aren't they? They're just looking at us in amazement. How could we do something so
I love your accent looking at us in amazement. Christine, your family. So you've got your husband.
Well, my husband died.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So your husband died. You've got children, and your children are back in the UK, or they're
The
here?
one in the UK. She's a civil engineer
Civil engineer, right?
in
Okay.
the UK, and my son is teaching in Madrid, teaching science in Madrid.
Teaching science in Madrid. So your daughter in the UK, she's a civil engineer in York.
No, she's in Warwick at the moment.
In Warwick, okay. So, how long has she been back in the UK?
Well, she went to university in the UK, but she wrote her thesis in Italy, you know, like you can do. And
If you're
but
European.
yeah.
Yeah.
So she's just went back to the UK to work to become a chartered engineer, and she's just coming up to that point now where she can write everything off as achieved every kind of facet of engineering, and then she wants to go into international development and.
Really?
You live in Luxembourg. You've got children that have been educated in Italy and
Brussels,
living
Luxembourg,
in Spain and one of them in the UK. And this is the whole point of the European Union. You can just move. You can just go anywhere. But there's a idea that has been put out by the right-wing media, I guess, to say that the people who are doing these things and benefiting from the EU are all metropolitan elites.
Yeah,
the point is, you don't sound like a metropolitan elite.
Do you think this is one of the biggest fakeries out there, that this is somehow kind of class-based?
Yes.
And that people in whatever, if that still exists now, the working class, the middle class, the upper middle class, if they're in a certain class, they will have voted a certain way.
Yes.
And that's, you look at Jacob Rees-Mogg, and then you might look at, I don't know, someone else who would consider themselves working class, a bricklayer,
coal miner,
whatever, voted the same way.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with class. It's got to do with what they were told and what they felt and how they were at the time.
And
it's an emotional. It is. If it was in French, if it was in France, they call it an emotional. What's it called? A crime of emotion.
Crime of passion.
Crime of passion.
Yeah.
They would call it crime of passion.
It is a crime of passion.
Because it was all based on how people felt.
Yeah.
If Auf Wiedersehen Pet had come out in 2014, maybe people would think, hang on, this EU thing's pretty good. Auf Wiedersehen Pet, famously, British workers from the northeast going over to...
made redundant from...
going over to Germany to keep working. I mean... You're right about this.
But the other thing is that Britain, if Britain comes out the EU, it's Britain that won't have freedom of movement.
No.
The other 27 countries will still be able to do this.
Good point.
There's only Britain that won't be able to do it.
Well, they can go to Eire, go to Southern Ireland, no problem there. Just flip over the border and then you're in.
Yeah.
European Commission that you worked for, Christine, right? Can you tell us anything that you did for them? I mean, what was your actual role within that organisation?
It was all admin. I was working in the translation service to start with for a few years, and I went to Italy with them while Italy had the presidency of the council, 6 months.
So the presidency of the council goes round every 6 months. It goes to an EU member state, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Does it go to the buy-ins, the opt-ins, like Norway or Iceland or Switzerland? No. Okay.
So I spent a bit of time in Italy, and then I came back and I worked for the medical service for a while, just doing general admin, looking after the staff really, and then I was looking after newcomers, helping them to settle in, telling them what they needed to do and what the commission could do for them. So basically I've been looking after the staff.
Right, okay.
But I mean, you're working alongside the Italians and the Greeks and the French and the Flemish and the
whoever,
Polish, you're working alongside them all day and every day.
Yeah, it's a real melting pot of cultures.
Yeah.
You know, it's unbelievable, isn't it? And we're giving that up.
So is there any truth in this rumour that they can't get enough hot pickers now in Kent from the EU?
Yeah.
So they're therefore recruiting from Russia, Ukraine and Moldova.
Wouldn't surprise me where they're recruiting from.
We can look into it.
There are
needs to Google check maybe, but the point is, what's the difference here? What's the point?
Exactly. There are fruit and vegetables rotting in the fields in the UK this harvest feast because we haven't got the personnel, and it's not right. I mean, at the risk of sounding a bit UKIP, right?
Please
Are
don't.
they still around? Are they?
Unfortunately, but Dick Brain, who was the leader, Dick Brain, right?
His actual name is Dick Brain.
He was the leader of UKIP for about 2 months. He's actually stood down.
Has he?
Yeah, this week, which was good.
I see that.
Prick. But he, at the risk of sounding a bit UKIP, is it right that a nurse can earn more money coming from I don't know, Slovakia picking fruit when she should be working as a nurse.
Oh, okay.
You know, and there's a moral and ethical question about that. To me, you know, I'm an engineer. I could earn more money working as an engineer in Australia, but I choose at the moment not to. There's got to be
anyone who lives in the UK could earn more living in London.
Yeah, but I mean, people actually are going to put in the comments, well, if you can earn more money in Australia, fuck off back to Australia, man. You know, and it's like, seriously, you know, there's reasons people live in these places.
Their family and their friends.
Their family, their friends.
And that means more than
money. You live in
money.
Luxembourg. How far out of the city are you?
I've moved in fairly central now.
See, fairly central, okay. And
Me too, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. So there's reasons why these people are here, you know, and it's like, yeah, and they're going to say, oh, well, if you love the EU so much, live there. We do. We're British.
Well, let me just throw this one in because I think it's just something I believe in. So I don't think it's very British to run away. I don't think.
That's a good
honestly,
point.
honestly don't think so. And I think
good point.
That's a really good point.
I think if you look in the past, love or loathe, whoever it was in charge, normally the Brits get in there and change something that's wrong. The EU's not right in every quarter.
No,
absolutely
it isn't.
not. It does need change. But get in and change it. Don't say we're picking up the ball and running off. We'll leave it up to the Germans and the French to sort it out. Why would you do that?
Work at it. You know?
Also, Britain is the representative of the Commonwealth in the
But the
EU.
Commonwealth, you know, that's being held up as well. We can have deals with the Commonwealth. Yeah, you can. First thing that Modi said in India was, well, then we want freedom of movement.
You take India out of the equation, all of the countries apart from Britain who are in the Commonwealth, their combined GDP is less than the GDP of France.
A bit like the fishing, huh? Don't they reckon that all this fishing hoo-ha comes down to something like the same amount that you earn in a course of a year from taxes from Harrods?
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't know. These are probably facts which, again, everyone can check from Google. But it just seems to me a very un-British thing to do, that we really ought to be in Europe and, and changing
Reform
it from within.
Britain has its fingers in lots and lots of pies because we're not just in EU, we're NATO, we're part of the UN. I mean, we're part of the UN Security Council.
And
we are
as you
also on
said-
about 56 other different councils, bodies, and trade unions and things like this around the world. By trade unions, I mean like trade plaques that actually look at the UK and say, "Can you give us some advice on this?" And we were looked at as someone who would give good advice.
We
about
were held
things.
in high esteem, I think, in international organisations.
And
No
that
doubt.
soft
No doubt.
How do you think we're held now?
was
I think they're sad. I don't think they're angry with us. I think they're
The
sad.
look
we're
on
leaving.
Christine's
sad.
face.
I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was like when I'm, broke the back window on the
Britain through
my dad.
Britain through its overseas embassies and the British Consul around the world. We really had this amazing amount of soft power, and it wasn't about turning up with places with tanks and bombs and
And a flag.
It was about like people would listen to us and think, that they've got something to add to this conversation,
always
to this
have.
argument. We're losing that. We're losing that around the world really quickly.
And
if we continue on the way we are,
Yeah.
Scotland's going to leave us. I mean, are we even going to keep our seat on this UN Security Council
Well, I think-
when we're England and Wales and not the UK?
United Kingdom, yeah. But you touched on something really important there as well. I think, we represent the Commonwealth in the EU.
Yeah. Well, we can leave it to Malta and Cyprus, but
Yeah, but, they've got a population of about, how many?
5.
I was about to say 4, but I thought you'll shoot me down in flames. But what's the population of Cyprus? What's the population?
a few million. It's not much,
Yeah, I mean, it's Malta, 2 million?
if that.
If that, yeah. So, I
1 million.
the Commonwealth is actually losing a massive spokesperson for it.
A representative in the biggest trading union in the world.
We did a podcast here earlier today in Oscar's Bar and Grill in the Grund.
In the
Luxembourg.
Grund.
The Grund.
The Grund. In Luxembourg.
And we asked, there was Judy and there was Peter. Now, I asked these questions just because we're going to make this a bit lighthearted because we're on a bit of a Euro road trip.
Okay.
So we asked Peter and Judy, who would they rather have a drink with? So Boris Johnson or Nigel Farage? Go, Christine.
Just got to wasn't there either of them, actually.
All right, good, spoken like a good Yorkshire woman. I'd set whippet on them.
That's right. Yeah.
So, no, right. Out of the hard Brexiteers, Kate Hoey or Katie Hopkins.
Oh, Stalin.
So there we go.
That is like the worst though, because the people who are representing us, and this isn't just the people in the UK, but this is people in the US, the people in Brazil and the Philippines and Turkey and so many countries around the world. We have access to more information than ever before in the history of humanity. And instead of using that access to the information to actually enrich and educate yourself with facts, people have gone, no, I've got to go out and find that one person on the other side of the planet who has the same crackpot theory that I do, and then that validates my theory. Exactly. And that goes back to what you were saying, Keith, about people don't change their minds.
You know, there are flat earthers. There are people who cannot be convinced that
anti-vaxxers,
people who think that the moon landing was a hoax, and so on and so forth. You won't shift those people.
Do you think the Russians might have said something at the height of the Cold War? They might have mentioned it.
Well,
so question for you guys. Guys, if I can.
Yeah.
How do we change the minds of the Brexiteers?
well, on some of them you don't. I mean, don't forget, a lot of people, and I was up at a facility in the northwest of the United Kingdom for a few weeks. I can't really say the name of it, but, you come away glowing from that place.
Oh, is it the Ready Breck Factory?
The Ready Breck Factory, right? And so, but I was working with some of my team, and they're great guys. I mean, they're 21 and 22 now, and they said the referendum was the first thing I ever voted in. And I voted to leave. And I said, why? And they said, well, because we believed what Mum and Dad had told us, and we believed what we read in The Sun in the crib room being the lunchroom. We believed what we read in the Daily Mail or online, And it's like, I voted for it, but now I know more. I don't want it. So people, I'm afraid to say, people our age and like me, I mean, my father voted for Remain, but one of a close friend of the family, she voted to leave, and she'll never change her mind, and she's 80 and she's never going to change her mind, and okay.
So is it lost cause? So do you think it's lost cause?
No, it's not a lost cause.
I think
it's
that
the younger
convincing
people who have now actually
Yeah, I was going to say,
fact.
I think that trying to change people's minds is a lost cause.
Yeah.
I don't think you can. But what keeps me going and what keeps me fighting against Brexit and knowing that one day we will rejoin is the fact that 75% of people at the age of 18 to 25 voted to remain.
Yeah, and nobody born this century voted to leave.
No one. Absolutely.
Not a single one.
Because they weren't allowed to vote. But that's not the point. But younger people ensure that there's going to be... There is such thing as a tide of... a flow of history, isn't there? Of like this idea that there's a certain way you can look at things and go, am I on the right side of history in this? I like to think that if you look around and see who's on your team, that's a good indicator of whether you're on the right side of history or not. And I always think that, look at history, learn from what's happened. Has history gone in a way that has become less democratic around the world? No. Countries that were autocratic, countries that had monarchies, absolutist monarchies, and countries that were fascist, countries that were Nazi, eventually fell to democracy. Because democracy is the best way of doing it. It really is on every level, on financial level, economic level, on the way of people's well-being level. It is the best way of doing
Davis
it.
once said, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, a country ceases to be a democracy when it can't change its mind. So there we go.
Are you optimistic, or do you think it can change?
Well, I'm
or you
always
think...
an optimist. I'm
Good.
afraid. So,
do you think we're going to go for
I think
Brexit or what?
We've just got to keep going for it and pushing
Anti-Brexit.
pushing the right people.
Yeah. Okay.
To
Change the hearts and minds.
and persuade the public that it's a really bad idea.
Yeah. We want to say a big thank you to Oscar's Bar and Grill here in the Grand in Luxembourg. Thank you for your hospitality.
And Chris and Keith for coming out to...
Absolutely.
And Judy has partaken in one of these and has hung around just to be entertained, I think. And, yeah. Anyway.
Brexit sucks, everybody.
So what we're going to say is, bollocks to Brexit. Everyone's finished the drinks.
Exactly.
And here's to the EU.
There's the EU.
EU.
Cheers.
Cheers.